Um, I mentioned earlier about whether this is going to make the video portion of the show or not. Quick little announcement, I guess you could say. I'm going to not put the whole recorded show on YouTube now. It's just going to be the stuff that actually has visual content, because I think trying to get people to sit down and watch two people just talk on YouTube, it's just not going to work. So Dave and I are going to do our normal stuff. The whole thing will be on audio, but the video content for the YouTube channel will just be what you're about to see here, which is photos that we're going to look at, and maybe talk about tips and stuff like that. But then that's going to be probably it for the YouTube channel. Hopefully it will be a better experience for everybody, and I think that's the way to go. So we're going to try that out and see how it works. So now we move on to the proper video portion of the show, where we're going to look at some photos, and this is also going to tie into some macro stuff that you'll see here shortly. So Dave, you've got some pictures that we're going to look at first,
right?
And I will put them on the screen here. There we go.
Okay, so this is, and this was taken during a walk at lunch, and yeah, now this is portrait mode. You can tell it's portrait mode because the part where the ice starts to go away, you notice that the portrait mode had a little issue with the twig part. It kind of gets blurry and goes away there. But honestly, I was walking back and I looked over, and it looks like some kind of monster out of the Godzilla movie.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it?
It looks like a giant praying mantis of some type. And this is just the leftover ice after a couple of days of melt and refreeze as it's coming off of the end of a branch. Now this was portrait mode. This was also using the 3x portrait mode. So because the tree was in a middle of normal of a grassy area, but that grassy area had a bunch of snow in it. So I was around 10, 15 foot away. So I needed the zoom to actually get a decent crop. And I did some editing on top of just taking the photo too. So the ice in the original photo didn't look this translucent, but when you looked at it with your naked eye, it did look this translucent. Mm-hmm. And just it honestly, it looks like a piece, in my mind, a piece of ice sculpture.
It kind of does, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It does, yeah.
And honestly, the way it looks like leaves, or not leaves, it looks like feathers almost. Yeah. The way the ice is coming off. And
yeah, because this looks like it could be a wing with feathers.
Yeah.
And then the tail in behind here. Like, you really have to use your imagination, I'm sure, but yeah. I see it.
Yeah, and it was, like I said, the head, and it looks like you have a head on top.
Yeah.
Like an insect head. So it's just one of those shots that honestly you don't get unless you have your camera on you. I don't want to say all the time because it makes me sound like I'm an addicted person, but going for a walk at lunch, I don't know how many people are going to be, oh, I'm going to carry my Canon or my whatever, or I'm not saying people don't. You may be taking your Fujifilm camera because you're like, well, I'm going to go for a walk, and if I happen along something, that's great. But the fact that it's just like, okay, and I was like, oh, that's interesting, and boom, picture. And like I said, I wish I could say yes, and I did. Basically, this is what was seen.
And the funny thing is if you'd have walked another 4 or 5 feet one way or the other and looked at it, you wouldn't see it like we do now with where with the wings and the tail and what looks like it could be a head or whatever. Like, it just wouldn't look the same.
Yeah, and if you look,
and it might not be, it might not be as effective.
No, and if you look on the upper right, you can see the cleared off branch. So it was only the tip of the branch where there was ice on it. The rest of it was melted and clear. So it was just one of those weird things that just happens when water freezes and stuff happens.
Yeah, and it looks to me like the wind was probably blowing while it was doing that too, because that caused it to,
In one
go out like
direction
that.
there. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's cool. Okay, so your second photo, back here. There we go.
Okay, now this is one that I actually took last night. We actually have a little break in the clouds. And I'll say, and this is something I've said a couple times, is that the Hallmark movies and Hollywood movies lie to you about winter. For people who
Oh
live
yeah.
where there's not snow. No, you do not go out and have wonderful clear snow and beautiful clear skies. No, I'm sorry. Maybe some places do, but most of the time, if you have snow, you have white overcast clouds. So the fact that the clouds were breaking up at night, so I was able to do a night photo here. But I was also able to go, because I thought it was a good photo, but nothing popped per se as much as I wanted to. So I did go in the polar, and I did do a little bit of the, brightening up and getting a little more intense with the blue and a little more intense with the browns and the orangish browns of the trees. But I also added in what looks like snowflakes here in terms of the flares they have. And the green, I guess it's supposed to be an aurora borealis there, but it almost looks lens flare-ish like. So I added that in also. So this
it kind
is
of looks like a light leak, sort of.
exactly. So this is kind of a combination of, in my mind, it's a combination of a picture and I hate to use the term painting. It's not really painting, but extra enhancements to a photo where, adding additional things that definitely are not there. And it did not look like this when I took it, but I thought it had a nice feel to it.
Yeah.
And you can
Yeah, it's
see
cool.
in the snow, we've had some visitors, as you can see the footprints in the snow.
And you know what? When I first saw this, I almost thought that I did think, I thought for a second that those were stars, and I didn't realize that they were like snowflakes that were added on until I got looking at it a little closer and realized that a lot of them are in front of the trees, like especially on the left-hand side there, you can see them. Yeah. That's cool. So now we're going to move on to this one.
Right. Now, this is a macro mode taken with the built-in app. Oh, there we go. This is the unedited. So this is just taking the photo as is. This is with the ultra wide. So this is with the 0.5. This is a wicker table with a glass top that's on my porch. And the snow was not melted on the glass part. And honestly, I don't want to say a lot of care, but it was just a matter of me hunching over and taking the photo. And the fact of how clear you can see the individual snowflakes / crystals are. And you can see the individual, now this is a plastic wicker table, but you can see that where it's kind of bent, where it's already starting to kind of crack a little bit. And you can see the segments of the plastic being shown there.
Yeah.
And this is
like you say about the snow, it brings the texture out in the snow.
Yeah. And now this is one thing because I did take another macro of just the snow part. And it's still, but the problem is it didn't have a contrasting color or texture. So all you saw was, and honestly, it looked like static. If you see old TVs, old images of static on a TV or something, because there was nothing to say, okay, here's what, like here you have the brown to go with the white. You also have the different textures of the wicker going with, because if you notice a lot of the macro photos, they will definitely zoom in on a subject or a part, but there'll be a contrasting, like if you look at a bee or something, you'll have the contrast to the flower it's on.
Yeah.
So but you just can't say, oh, I'm going to take a picture of this up close. Maybe it's a leaf or a blade of grass or, fur on your cat or dog, without that secondary texture
element.
or yeah, exactly. So that's one
Yeah.
thing when you're thinking about taking macro photos, think, okay, I can get in nice and tight. I have this beautiful image here, but what else? What can I do to make it pop a little bit more? And of course, that's where also you can get into editing. And so I use Polar a lot. A lot of times I'm using Pixelmator Pro to do some sharpening and some other correcting, and then I'll throw it into Polar to get a feel. So this is Polar and just a little bit of sharpening here, a little bit more of an unusual color. So I popped the color a little bit more and just making it straight brown. You can see some greens coming in. I want to say I may have used, I'm trying to remember what the thing's called. Fringe, I think it's called, where it kind of separates the color into kind of multiple channels and just physically separates it a little bit. So I think I did a little bit on that on here.
Right.
But again, you can see like kind of the difference between the snow and the wicker and kind of the border between the two. So you get something interesting happening, and you get, like I said, it does act as a border, the wicker kind of going around. So as you're taking your macro photo, you still have to think about, not only think about, well, macro, can I get it sharp enough? Can I get it clear enough? But I still have to have a good outline of what's going on. And still keep all the, normal photography ideas as you're doing macro on top of it.
Yeah. So now we have a little added bonus to this, where Dave did a screen recording of how he took this shot. So I will share this, and here's how Dave went through the process of getting this shot.
Hey everyone, ignore the barking dogs as we try some macro shots. Now, I'm going to use normal camera, bell there, and I'm going to try to take a macro shot of I have an iPhone 13 Pro Max, any of the Pros, either the Pro or the Pro Max, either one's fine. Notice as I get closer, all of a sudden things are going to, did you see that little movement right there? So right now it's in macro mode. And you need relatively good light, but notice, now if I hold it still, I can either do the Winex, or if I want like wider field of view, which, you could want like right here. Now, one thing about the iPhones, especially the 13s, you got to give it a couple seconds to, normally not that bad, to do a little processing. You can see the details here on the macros. I kind of like this one a little bit better. And you can see like the individual parts here of the plastic wicker. And you can see the individual snowflakes. Pretty nice how you can do right there. So quick job on just how to do photos without any editing. Of course, you can do editing and do some adjustments on it afterwards if you want, because it's just a normal live photo. Thanks so much. Talk to you later. Bye.
And there you have it. Yeah, so that's a really good illustration of how macro works, if anybody hasn't seen it before. And as far as that, taking time for the picture to process and res in, I'm finding that on my 12 Pro Max in the Apple camera. I don't know if it takes halide that long. Reflex, it takes a little bit, but I'm shooting ProRAW all the time, so that's probably contributing to that. But I noticed you were not using RAW on that one.
Right.
Can you do ProRAW with macro on your phone?
I do not know. Well, you look at
Well,
your
you have
photos.
a homework assignment.
Well, you know what? While you're going over your photos, that's something I can test.
Okay, sure.
I believe you can. I think the delay on mine was also because I was doing screen recording at the same time.
Right.
So
yes,
that would take a lot more, in terms of horsepower, so I can see that taking a lot more. Oh, I'm doing a screen recording, and by the way, now you want me to work on a photo at the same time. Okay, I'm going to take a second instead of a half a second.
Yeah,
I can see that happening. So
yeah. All right, very good. And thanks for providing that screen recording, because that's really helpful for folks who, you know, maybe haven't tried out macro mode on their 13 Pros yet. But so continuing on in our recent photos segment, I should have said that at the beginning of it all, but I'm going to continue on with the macro shot, and this has got a, you know, kind of a funny story behind it. But this is a stink bug, and I don't know how this thing got into my house last week, but my wife found it sitting on the freezer, just on the top lid of the freezer. And I'm thinking, there's no way. I mean, I don't know how it got in. I have no idea. And because I don't even think that it should be um, around this time of year, unless the only thing I can think of is that I was at the grocery store earlier that day and it came in on some broccoli. I bought broccoli, and that's the only thing I can think of. But when my wife washed out the broccoli, she didn't see it. She didn't notice
No,
it. Maybe it
I,
jumped out before, you know, we
you know what?
unpacked. I don't know.
Those things are everywhere. Seriously, and they're everywhere. And this is the time, fall and winter, the time, at least in the last couple of years, they have overrun. Now, admittedly, this year hasn't been as bad. But I do remember a couple of years ago, someone had a picture and their entire side of the house were covered with stink bugs.
Really?
Yeah. And I don't, other than five, if you go older than 5 years ago, I don't remember ever hearing about stink bugs around us. And then all of a
Yeah.
sudden, they're everywhere. I found one in our house, and it's like, I have no idea where it comes from. Literally,
Yeah.
it's ugh.
But I mean, I haven't seen one since probably late summer. But my wife was going to smack it with a fly swatter or something, and she says, you know, before she did that, she says, "Is this a stink bug? I don't want to kill it if it's going to stink up the place or whatever." So I got it on the fly swatter, and I flung it at the back door, and it was like minus 18 degrees out. And I'm thinking, well, if anything, it's just going to end up dying in the cold. And lo and behold, in the garage, a couple of days later, it was inside the garage on a like a just a curtain that covers the back window. And there it was sitting there. And I'm thinking, oh, you can't be, this can't be like the cat that came back. So I go up to it and I took a screwdriver or something and I just kind of touched it a bit and it didn't move. It was obviously dead. It frozen to death. So what do? As one does, you get it on the screwdriver and you take it out in the snow and you have fun with your macro lens. so I took a bunch of shots with it with the macro lens, and that in the top left-hand corner of the image is just a little sprig of a cedar leaf for scale. And you know, I cropped a little bit out because I wanted to, you know, emphasize the bug. But my lens, because it was so cold, my lens was fogging up a bit, so it kind of gives the photo a bit of a surreal look to it. But I used my Struman macro lens on this one, and so yeah, that's one of the shots that was on my camera roll in my recent photos from this past week. So this one, this is what happens when you get off work on the night shift about 2/3 of the way through your shift, and take a drive around town when there's nobody out. It was freezing cold again, and I just went down this alleyway, and I took this same shot years ago with my Canon camera. But at that time there was more snow. There was more snow on the steps, but I thought, no, I'm going to revisit it anyway and take the shot and see how it comes out. Night mode, probably 3 seconds, maybe, I don't know, but it was just in the car, windows down, took the shot and carried on. And I just thought it was kind of a neat way that the shadow from the stairs reflects on the wall and whatnot. So
Oh no, definitely. And I like the fact that if you look directly behind the staircase, the pattern, the brick changes a bit. You have a little
yeah,
section there were vertical, which I'm guessing may have been a window at one time.
that's my thinking, Dave. That's
that
kind
was
of
filled
how
in?
yeah. I mean, and this building will be, um, gosh, I would say early 19th century is probably when it was built.
Okay, that
Not
makes
not
sense
not,
then.
not 19th century, sorry, early 20th century.
Right,
Keep
right.
forgetting we're in the 21st century.
Early 1900s. Early
Yes,
1900s. That's nice way.
yes,
Yeah, we don't want to
yeah,
be the ones people who say, well, for those of you born in the late 1900s,
yeah,
people who are in their 20s who were born in the late 1900s.
yeah, yeah. But it's an old building. Let's put it that way. And but yeah, so that's what it looks like to me. Is that it would possibly from a window or something. That's the only thing I can think of, is that there was a window there or something, and that could have been the top of the window, maybe. But either that or somebody was just having fun doing brickwork. So it's hard to say. But so then finally, this was just another. We had about a week or two of really, really, really cold weather, and this is in a little town that's probably about 20 miles away from here, uh, on the same bay, that Georgian Bay, that I live on, that my hometown is on, and this was looks like an old remnants of a dock or something that it just got covered with ice from the waves and whatnot, and then the fragmented ice in the background. And this one here, I use Reflex, the camera app Reflex, to take this shot. And you know what? I'm really liking that app. I'm using it more, and uh, it's coming along, and they've got a really cool release coming up too. While I'm at it, I'll say that. And that I'm not sure when that comes out. It's 1.4. Um, and they've also, here's a little tidbit for everybody. The folks at Reflex announced on Instagram today through a story that they've got some lenses coming out. And so that's obviously got my attention peaked a little bit. So we'll keep you up on that as we learn more. So yeah, so that's excuse me. So that's what I've been shooting lately. Not a whole lot really, but um, it's been cold. It's almost been too cold to go out and walk
Yeah.
around looking for stuff to take pictures of. But um, that's been on my
Yeah.
camera roll lately.
Yeah. I mean, the ice picture is nice. I mean, it is a real good feel for, first of all, how clear it is, and just a real feel for you look at it, you feel cold.
I was getting cold, I tell you. I took about 3 or 4 pictures, and um, by that time I was ready to get back in the car because my fingers were getting almost numb. It was so cold. Like it was minus. I bet you it was minus 18, minus 20 Celsius. So I don't know how that translates into Fahrenheit, but boy, that was some cold.